Welcome back, everybody, finally, to For Azeroth, the Warcraft podcast that we struggle to produce in a timely fashion. I'm Garrett Weinzierl, and I'm joined, as always, by Jocelyn Moffett. Jocelyn, how you doing?
I'm not too shabby, Garrett. How you doing?
Oh, good. Recording this after lunch, so full belly. And also, it's been over a month, I think, since we did one of these, because, I don't know.
Just about. I think it was the very beginning of September.
Yeah. So, house buying, hurricanes, and successful Kickstarter get in the way of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they do. So, but anyway, we are
Glad
back.
You didn't get blown away by the hurricane, by the way. Any For Azeroth listeners are probably wondering.
Yeah. I mean, you're all that's left. I mean, Dill's damn near got hit. I did get hit, but survived. We're just gonna have to have some weird miracle Canadian hurricane now.
Jeez, I hope not. We are not prepared.
No, you're not. So, anyways, today we will be finishing up the Order Hall campaign lore segments with the Monk Order Hall campaign. We'll also be talking about that Alleria and Turalyon audio drama. But before we get into that, we have a giveaway and some announcements to make. First up is the giveaway brought to us by listener RedFox15, who bought us a shadow in-game pet to give away on the show. So how are we giving this away, Jocelyn?
So anyone who follows us on Twitter, tweet us with your favorite in-game location and the hashtag #FazGiveaway for your chance to win a copy of this pet. And Garrett, I don't know if you have this pet in game, but I have this pet in game because as soon as it came out, I went, super cool pet for charity. Boom, done. And yeah, got it like day one. It's so adorable. I love everything about it.
It's rather cute, as most of the in-game pets are, especially ones that they sell for money.
Mm-hmm. And it actually changes between light and shadow, which is very much a theme of today's show. So, well, I would say today's show, but really just 7.3 in general. The balance between light and shadow is a very big theme. So the in-game pet reflects that. It's super, super cute. So again, if you want a chance to win, tweet us with your favorite in-game location and the hashtag #FazGiveaway. Yep. I'm excited to see all the places that people love to hang out in Warcraft.
I like it. Mine goes back to vanilla. Winter Spring. I did just something about it the first time finding it. Probably because I had to corpse run the damn furball cave. I died like 10 times getting through that, and then after
I vaguely remember this story.
Yeah, only afterwards, after making it to Winter Spring, did I find that if I had just followed the damn quest line in Felwood, I would have been friendly with the furball, and they would have let me pass. But now they hate me.
But you had to get there real quick for the sweet XP, right?
Exactly. I just wanted to go to a zone that was snowy because I didn't level through Dunmoreau. So, yeah. Anyways, that's mine. What do you have? Do you have one off the top of your head?
Oh man, probably. I really liked the not Veil of Eternal Blossoms, the Jade Forest in Pandaria actually. Jade Forest or Timeless Isle. I really liked the aesthetics of Pandaria, but I liked the parts that like weren't super duper Shaw corrupted, you know? So
yeah, not
so much like the I guess maybe Crastarang Wilds was pretty cool too. Yes. But yeah, I liked Pandaria, so.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I really enjoyed that as well. Most of Pandaria is gorgeous, with the exception of that darn Claxy final zone, which I'm still not a fan of. It never did anything for me.
The Dread Wastes?
The Dread Wastes, yeah. There we go. I just call it the Beehive. That's what I refer to it as.
But yeah, so I think probably Pandaria, but that's also because like I just like have such a warm place in my heart because that was the first expansion that I really was like at least close to max level. I was still playing catch up with like all my friends who were actually on the cutting edge of the content, but at least I felt like I was a little bit up with the, you know, my friends and doing what they were doing, and I was almost there. Draenor was the first time I was actually like, day one, max level, let's go, let's do this. And we all know how that expansion turned out, so.
Yeah, a little bit. That was the first time I raided with you, as a matter of fact.
I don't have as many fond memories of that expansion.
No, not particularly. So anyways, yeah, everyone again, tweet at us with your favorite in-game location and add that hashtag #FazGiveaway, FAZ giveaway. for a chance to win Shadow Pet. Thanks again, Red Fox 15, for donating that for Azeroth. And now for some announcements, Joss.
Yeah, so I guess sadly we have decided that we are going to put Faz on hiatus, and I think anyone who's been following the show has realized that it's kind of been over the summer has taken a back seat to a lot of our other projects, and it's for a couple of different reasons. Basically, we aren't doing too much outside of raiding in World of Warcraft, which makes it kind of difficult. And actually, I think Garrett hasn't even been raiding.
Nope.
So
Nope.
It's I mean, outside of doing the quest content for 7.3, it's mostly just kind of daily grind stuff, and we've been getting a little bit burnt out. So that kind of made for Azeroth largely a lore only show. So as much as I specifically love doing all the lore, there's a lot of different places covering lore now, so we felt like it was kind of a good time to give the show a bit of a break. That being said, we do plan to come back for things like BlizzCon coverage, which is in literally like a month, and probably we'll do another go at it in the next expansion, whatever that happens to be, but we all totally know it's going to be the Void, so why are we even saying what's it going to be? But
yep.
So the plan is to come back periodically for things, so don't delete Faz from your podcast feeds. There will be new episodes coming up when there's things about Warcraft that we're excited about. We just won't be doing a weekly show anymore.
No, and frankly, it's already kind of been on hiatus, so we're just doing this episode to come back and officially tell you that it's on hiatus.
Yeah, we're basically thinking that, like, we wanted to wrap up the 7.3 storyline. We wanted to talk about the audio drama. We wanted to give you guys some closure because we still had one class order hall left to go. So that's basically the plan for now. If you do like hearing Garrett and I do shows together, we are going to continue Embrace the Spoilers, which was also part of our decision for putting Faz on hiatus, because Embrace the Spoilers is really flexible in terms of topic, and sometimes it just makes that a little bit more interesting for Garrett and I. We can also do, and we have done in the past, which is kind of how Faz came to be in the first place, we can do video game content on Embrace the Spoilers as well. So that also kind of led to the decision. But yeah.
Flexibility
is nice, yeah.
Very fun in a time when you may or may not be burnt out doing dailies and grinding rep.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of the big Faz news right now. So sorry to kind of start the show off on a bit of a downer, guys, but we wanted to make sure that we got it out there so everyone knew what was going on.
I like to think that there's at least one person out there still listening that heard that news and was like, finally, I'm so glad this show is going away.
Aww.
I don't know why you're listening, but I like to think that there's one person super excited about this. And then hopefully a bunch of people who also enjoy Embrace the Spoilers and are legitimately excited that show is continuing
is going to continue, yeah.
For the time being, yes. So yeah, we've obviously been going back and forth on this for a while, and it was hard enough to meet to hit all of the dates for Embrace the Spoilers, which was part of a successful Kickstarter. So yeah, it was tough for us to squeeze all of this in. So choices had to be made. Is really what it came down to.
So we're sorry, guys, but you can still catch us on Embrace the Spoilers, and we'll still be talking about WoW on our Twitter feeds and all that kind of stuff. So the love of the game is still there. We're both still subbed. It just it's a lot of scheduling problems, really.
Yeah, no.
I talk to him enough. I don't want to keep talking to him yet another time during the week. We already talk every freaking day. I can only take so much, Garrett, guys.
Yeah. And,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I could talk to Jocelyn a lot, but that's because I'm a nice person who wouldn't ever admit mean things like she just said.
Aw. Now I feel really bad even just for my joke.
But there's still some Warcraft stuff we wanted to talk about today, and the one I'm most excited about, even though you really had to force me to listen to this because it was like audio drama. I don't give a damn. And then I started listening to it. The Alleria and Turalyon audio drama turns out pretty cool.
It was, okay, so the audio drama was really, really cool. I wrote out a whole ton of notes, and we're not going to do a play-by-play because we do have an actual lore section to do with the Order Hall. So I'm not going to go play-by-play like we normally do when we go through stuff like this. But if you haven't listened to the audio drama, I really, really do recommend it because it's very well done. I enjoyed listening to it thoroughly. I think The only part that kind of dragged for me was the section in part 3. There was a Turalyon section in part 3 that really started to drag for me, and I was kind of like, oh, whatever, just tell me more about Alleria, because this whole story could basically just be like the Alleria story.
I was feeling the same way, although I was very much enjoying the Turalyon stuff in the first 2 parts. This really fleshed out Turalyon to be a much more interesting character for me, and he's paladin as hell, and I love it. And the voice actors that they got for Turalyon and for Alleria, through this audio drama, there's really good chemistry, which is weird to say for something I can't see play out visually.
Exactly. It's really hard to sell things when you're in an audio only format. When you can actually see characters interacting together on screen, usually it makes a big difference. But you're right, there was so much chemistry between these 2 actors. You could really like hear the pain in their voices when they got to the point where they kind of can't be together anymore, really, the way that they were. So, I mean, it explains everything about the idea of like what happened to them over the past 1,000 years. It talks a little bit more about the Twisting Nether and the nature of it, and explains how time passes on Azeroth versus the Twisting Nether. It explains how Turalyon is now immortal, which is kind of cool, because I know I personally was like, dude's a human. Even if they can explain how like 1,000 years have passed since they've left, Alleria should be alive and he should be long dead. So WTF. So they explained the whole, like, he became one with the light, which gave him immortality, which I thought was a really neat kind of twist. And yeah, they really paint the light and the void in a way that a lot of people were getting the impression of anyway, that they're more like 2 opposing forces, with one not necessarily being more right than the other. So that was a really interesting confirmation for me to see, like, you know, the light isn't necessarily good. The void isn't necessarily evil. The void is a kind of, by nature, a hostile type force of like anarchy, sort of like disorder. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. You need that in order for the order of light to exist.
Yeah, I'm laughing at our chat room as well. Thank you, Justin. Robert
okay.
These are all themes we've been talking about as we've been going through all of the lore, especially throughout things like the Priest Order Hall campaign. And I think it was more or less confirmed after the sweet cinematic with Illidan and Zera that we talked about on our last episode. And then this audio drama just kind of doubles down on that. The fact that when they first meet with Lothraxion, they're introduced to the Army of Light. We get to see at least the Army of Light's explanation of the void, and it's what we kind of knew going into Legion, which was like light good, void bad. And then the more we got into Legion, we realized it was more shades of gray, and that the same thing plays out throughout this audio drama. Part 1 is very much kind of black and white, paladin lights good, yay, and void bad. And then the further you go along this audio drama, we start getting peeks behind the curtain, and it kind of keeps deconstructing what Zera's selling piece by piece, until we realize that Zera and her beliefs, or its beliefs, because it's a genderless crystal being, is just as dangerous because of the power that Zera wields. So it's not that cut and dry. That's what I was hoping to get out of this.
They're very much 2 extremes, and they even touch on that a little bit in the audio drama as well, talking about how like the light can't see the void and the void can't see the light, and the light sees like one possible future and assumes it to be true, and the void sees all possible futures and assumes them to all be true. And it's such a cool way of looking at things, and why, you know, the beings of light, and Zera specifically, is so like just tunnel visioned on this emerald star and these 2 lights from Azeroth, and, you know, the fact that Illidan is the product of light and child of light and shadow, which, now that we've seen Alleria and her kind of progression into a void being, which is basically where 7.3 ends, it's really interesting now to think that maybe Illidan actually isn't the prophesized like savior. Maybe the actual child of light and shadow is Turalyon and Alleria's child, which is Eretor the Paladin. So I'm interested to see where they actually take the final story of Legion and who it's going to be that is actually like the prophesized savior of Azeroth. I think it's a really interesting theory that is a little bit different than the one they've kind of been selling throughout this whole expansion.
Yeah, and that would be really interesting if it turned out to be Erator. But then there's because of the game itself not going as deep into any of these themes, and also because Erator didn't get a shiny new model, it makes me think that is not the case, because we get 2 hints really that Xera's not just a great savior, and one is a throwaway line from Alleria about her being imprisoned for delving too deep into the void against Xera's wishes, and then trying to forcibly infuse Illidan with the light, and Illidan then just destroys Xera. That's it. That's pretty much all we really see in game. And then there's this audio drama going a lot deeper. So I don't know. It's one of those cases where I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much of this is just extra flavor on top of what we already know, because the game works. Warcraft works that way. You know when someone gets a new model that they're going to play a pivotal role in what's about to happen.
Yeah, that's very, very true. So, I mean, yeah, we might not actually see this play out in any significant way, but I thought that it was very interesting that we have literally now a being of light in Turalyon, because he's been made immortal and infused with the light, and a being of shadow in Alleria, which, dude, Alleria's like void model, first of all, they just like pretend the whole dungeon doesn't happen in game, because once you do the dungeon and you go back to the Vindicator, Alleria is there and she's like her normal self again, and she's like, whoa, that was an experience. And I'm like, oh, where's your super cool void model? You look so badass. Like, I would cosplay that would look so cool. But yeah, they just like, oh yeah, no, she's totally fine now. I wish they'd kept her like badass void babe, but anyways.
Yeah, and they've been doing a lot of good work with phasing and whatnot for years now. I'm surprised that's not the route they went.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but the audio drama itself takes place from the time when basically Draenor explodes and becomes Outland until the Xenadar, basically right before it crashes on Argus. So there's lots of really cool stuff in here. We actually meet a character in the audio drama who turns up in game in the 3rd week of questing through, I guess, Makari, I think, is when he shows up. So we actually get to meet Locust Walker, and we see what Alleria's kind of relationship with him is, and that's really cool. So there was a lot of different stuff. There was a lot of things that I think are kind of fleshing out and pointing to the void as or at least the conflict between the light and the void as the kind of theme for the next expansion. They're definitely laying a lot of groundwork. And actually, we probably should just like jump right into the 7.3 wrap up, because that's kind of where all of this is going. The whole like new dungeon and everything else, and all you see with your questing with Alleria and the Void. One thing that I noticed with Alleria and the Void specifically in the quest they released in the 3rd week was that Alleria and the Void, like, you get to see her interact with Locust Walker, and we see a lot more ethereal models in game. And Garrett, you just made the point that if they don't give them new models, then they're probably not involved too much in the story. Why redo all the ethereals from Burning Crusade if they aren't going to play a huge part in the next expansion?
Because they look old and cruddy, and you see them a bit in this section. Yeah, but for 1 week's worth of questing and like one part of a dungeon, do you really think that like, I mean, we have dungeons full of ethereals in Burning Crusade. Like, I don't know. It seems like a whole lot of work to create new models for characters that we're just going to see for this one little chunk of one little patch in Legion. Well, I hope you're right, because I love ethereals. Also, I still want them to be a playable race.
Right?
So we're pretty certain that we're dealing with the Void fairly heavily in the next expansion. So I think you're onto something. But I also think that their models were old and crusty.
They were, definitely. I also like the idea of like the reason for the ethereals being on Argus, being the kind of dark Naru, acting as this kind of like beacon for them. Like, she was such a force. I say she, but you know, again, genderless, but like, she's such a force of the void, and she's emanating so much power that the ethereals are just like, yo, that's our jam, let's go. Like they had no interest in Arcus whatsoever until now, and then they just were drawn there. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, that is very neat, and anything that gets ethereals back and involved makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things from Burning Crusade.
And yeah, chat room is saying that Alleria does say that she can control the void, and that was also another big theme of the audio drama, was kind of delving into the fact that Locust Walker is one of the only people, or I guess only beings, shouldn't say people, only beings who are actually able to control the void and control the power of the shadow without going mad, because that's the thing. When you can kind of see all different potential possibilities and all potential futures, then I can understand why all the whispers and all the visions of all those futures would drive anybody crazy.
Yep.
But Locust Walker and then now Alleria seem to be able to control it without going mad. Alleria thinks eventually she'll go insane, but she is able to kind of like see the differences in all of the futures based on the way that she saw one particular vision, because her truth is that she knows that she would never harm her son. And in one of her visions, she saw herself essentially killing Eretor.
Yeah.
And so she's like, okay, by looking at this vision, I can kind of pull apart the threads of it, and I can figure out how to then interpret all other visions based on what I know to be a false future. So I thought that like diving into that again, going back to the audio drama, was so cool. And I really wish that they had, I do not know how they would do it, and they would have to cutscene the hell out of it. But it makes me wish that a lot more of the content from things like the audio drama and from things like the books were actually included somehow in the game, because it fleshes things out so much better. Like they do very much gloss over it. Even if you go and talk to Alleria, she basically says like, whoa, that was an experience. Like I can control it, but you know, so much void power now, which I think brings her in line to be like a shadow hunter, which is like the way that, I know it's not quite the same as the trolls, but that's what Vol'jin was. So that makes me happy. More shadow hunter, more void. I'm happy.
Did you catch the reference to what I'm assuming was N'Zoth in the audio play?
Yes, but because I know you had actually mentioned this before I got a chance to listen to the third part, and a lot of people are like, and I think you included, were like, oh my god, you know, Alleria is going to be the next big bad, and I don't think that's true, because she very specifically said that those weren't those weren't true futures. You know?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I was thinking that that's what was going to happen. I'm just saying that I think it confirms N'Zoth is coming up next, and Alleria will come face to face with N'Zoth. But yeah, no, right after she mentions that and the vision of killing Eretor, she talks about how she can see that the void is blind.
Yes, yeah. And so she is, and again, like she can't necessarily be with the light in the way that Turalyon is with the light, but she seems to at least be able to somewhat harness the two powers and almost bring them together in a couple of different places and a couple of different times. So I think Alleria is kind of shaping up to be a really interesting character who I think is going to have a huge role to play in the upcoming expansion. I'm also really, really interested now to see what it's like bringing specifically Alleria and Sylvanas together, but also just all three of the Windrunner sisters when we finally get their reunion. Because I feel like Alleria now has kind of an insight into Sylvanas, and like would have when she was first talking to Verissa, but I feel like she'll be a little bit more sympathetic towards Sylvanas because of, you know, her delving into a power that, you know, she wasn't necessarily expecting. She always thought that she would be fighting on the side of light, and you know, so to be delving into the void and kind of exploring that path and that power, and then how she was treated by her friends and her husband, and you know, the goddess mother of light, whatever they call Zera, like to all those experiences together, I feel like now open her up to be a little bit more accepting of Sylvanas, as opposed to had she gone down the Turalyon path and gone like super duper light brainwashy the way that the void sees it, then she might potentially be a little bit less open to Sylvanas and what's going on in her story. So there's so much cool Windrunner stuff. I love it.
I feel like Verissa is getting the short end of the stick now. Really, really awesome life-changing events have happened to both Sylvanas and Alleria, and Verissa's just kind of on the sidelines like, well, I'm still just a ranger.
Well, her
guys?
husband did die in the whole Theramore explosion thing, so I would call that a little bit of a life-changing event. But you're right, she hasn't like embraced some kind of crazy power outside of what currently exists in her just as a high elf.
Yeah, no, of course. That being said, they haven't really done much with the fallout of Theramore for like since it happened, basically.
Yet, which I think again is key. I think Jaina is another character that is going to play a big role in the next expansion as well, because I think she's primed to fall to the whispers of N'Zoth and kind of like play out somehow, whether she becomes some sort of like a neutral faction pissed off at both the Alliance and the Horde, or whether she goes like full on angry boss type way. I don't know, but one way or another, I think there's definitely going to be some Jaina N'Zoth stuff going on.
This is where I'm contractually obligated to say, well, maybe Jaina just becomes the Lich King, because apparently that's the only place my brain goes when I want something cool to happen to a character they haven't done much with in a while. Jaina goes up to Bolvar, kills him, takes the helm. Lich Queen Jaina. Hearthstone predicted the future, everyone.
Oh, damn. No, not a Dreadlord chat room. Not a Dreadlord. We've been through this.
Nope. Not a Dreadlord. Not a Dreadlord. Confirmed by Heroes by adding a Dreadlord skin to troll everyone.
Yeah.
Very excited for the next expansion. It's probably still a ways out, though, sadly. All right, well, let's move into a second lore segment, because
why not?
This whole episode is just lore talk. The Monk Order Hall, the only Order Hall we haven't discussed yet. So you actually played through this.
I played through most of it. I didn't actually get my monk all the way. I think I got my monk to like 108, so I didn't do the final like once you hit 110 kind of scenario. So I missed out on a little bit of it, but I did play through some of it. I played through the attack on the Peak of Serenity and the siege of the monastery and all that kind of stuff. So it's actually it's kind of a cool campaign, and I felt that it fit the monk experience really well, which is something that we've said of all the Order Hall campaigns, you know, from this expansion, is that they really nailed the class fantasy one way or another. Like for better or for worse, they nailed the class fantasy part of it. So I really enjoyed the Monk Order Hall. I forgot to color code the notes, though. I'm sorry, Garrett. Did you want to take the first part, or did you want me to just jump right in?
Don't need to worry about that. Go for it. Start things off. I'll take over at the siege.
Right. So we start on the Peak of Serenity, which if you guys play through Pandaria, if you guys have a monk, you'll know. Basically, the Peak of Serenity is in, I believe, Kunlai Summit, and it's kind of like the location of where you go on like your Zen pilgrimages and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very central to the monk order. It's like the location of everything that happened with them. So all the senior monks are called to return to the Peak of Serenity in Pandaria as soon as possible after Dalaran is teleported to the Broken Isle. The Broken Shore. So Master Height is in the middle of addressing all the monks about the defeat at the Broken Shore when the Burning Legion attacks them. The demons are cutting down students left and right. Master Height sees the Legion command ship and so orders the evacuation of the peak. So basically he's just like, all right, this is not just a few, like they're full on big old command ship. They are coming to take us down. We have to get out of here. So the master sends a monk to the cave of the Crane to look for some survivors. And the monk finds Master Ninja.
No, it's clearly Ninja.
Well, but that is not how they pronounce it in the game, though. That's how it's spelled, but that's not how they pronounce it. Basically, she refuses to leave. She wants to save what she can of the monk's sacred text, which is what's stored in this cave. And if you guys, again, play through Pandaria, you know that they tend to store all of their ancient knowledge on these paper scrolls, so very, very easily destroyed, especially by things like Fellfire. So they basically, the Master Monk and Master Ninja defeat the demon Viznak and escape with centuries worth of historical scrolls, which they also wanted to protect from falling into the hands of the demons because they want to, save all of their sacred knowledge and all of their, fancy spells and locations of monasteries and all that kind of stuff is all on these historical scrolls. So keeping them out of the hands of the Legion was actually a very noble and important thing to do. So together, they head through the carnage and they try to find Chen Stormstout because he was teaching a class when the attack began. And then I've literally never seen a monk do this, but like if this was a power in the game, it would be the most OP thing ever. They do this super cool turn into a bubble of chi and just kind of like teleport over the whole entire battle and then land right outside across the bridge. I don't know why they didn't just land on the platform with Chen, but you have to fight your way across a bridge to make it to Chen and his class. So once you make it across the bridge, the students, along with Chen, Lily, and the monk hero, they're able to defeat another demon named Morvath the Reaver, and they escape to the temple. Chen secures the cubs while Master Height and the monk attempt to close a Legion portal that has opened and is threatening the evacuation of the peak. Portal Master Jorvanax is ordered by Lady Kellatris, who is our main villain in the Monk Order Hall campaign. He is ordered to keep the portal open, but of course he fails. However, the ensuing explosion knocks out the monk hero, who wakes up much later, safe on the Wandering Isle, which just happened to be swimming by in Manturi Village. Unfortunately, Master Height was not as fortunate as the monk hero and was killed in the blast that closed the Legion portal. So, as a result, the monk order requires new leadership, of course, and the monk hero has been chosen as a result of the strength, wisdom, courage, and kindness they have shown. This is when the Order of the Broken Temple is established. The monk hero is named Grandmaster, and both actions are a message of defiance to the Legion. Kind of a, oh, try to hit us at home, eh? Well, we're just going to make a new home. Screw you.
Thank you, giant floating island turtle.
Yep.
So moving on, after answering Khadgar's call to aid in the various areas on the Broken Isles, the Grandmaster is then called back to the Wandering Isle to recruit champions to the new cause. Of course.
Of course.
Chen Stormstout is the first champion, of course, to the newly formed order. For more about Chen, by the way, go and check out an older episode of For Azeroth, episode 20, to be specific. And then he is also followed quickly by his niece, Lily. After completing a mission back to the Peak of Serenity to retrieve some of the Master Ninja's, that's terrible, scrolls, she is able to offer improvements to the new temple on the Wandering Isle. The Grandmaster is also informed that Taiyan Monastery has not reported in, so you send scouts to investigate. The monastery turns out to be in trouble, so the Grandmaster heads there to help. At this point, the Legion is literally scorching the earth with fel, and many of the monks are already injured. So the Grandmaster destroys the fel spreaders while making their way up to the monks defending the monastery itself, led by Terran Zu. After putting the fires out, destroying fel spikes, and cleansing ales, the Grandmaster runs into the Monkey King, who saw the Legion take some prisoners away. He
speaks all in rhymes, which is hilarious. I don't remember actually, like, I remember the Monkey King in the stories from Pandaria, like in the cinematics and stuff, because he was a advisor to, I'm totally blanking on the Emperor's name, but is it Xiao Hao, I think? The Monkey King was like his advisor and friend, and I remember him from there, but I don't remember him like actually showing up. So he's freaking huge. Like, you know, you think pandas are pretty big, you think taurens are pretty big. The Monkey King, like, you come up to like barely his waist. He truly is the king of the monkeys.
I'm assuming also a reference to the old school Monkey King, Journey to the West, Chinese fables and whatnot. Also what Dragon Ball Z is based off of, loosely. Huh. Extremely loosely.
Oh, Chad is saying that apparently he does show up in the Kasserang Wild Zone. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I must just not have quested through that zone as much, because I know I did start to finish the Valley of the Four Winds, and I think that I was out-leveled by the time I did that content. I had out-leveled Kasserang, so I just went somewhere else. I think you had like the choice of maybe Kunlai or Kasserang, Karasang, whatever it's called. But yeah, I didn't go down there. I went up into the summit.
I feel like the wilds are my least explored area of Pandaria as well.
Which is kind of too bad, because there definitely is some Alliance and Horde content in that zone that's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, getting back to Lady Kellatris,
Yes, sorry.
Kellatris and Skola Greatsword, who Tidescorn, are transporting the monks through a portal to parts unknown. Skola is tasked with destroying the monastery for good, but will have to go through the Grandmaster first. Flex your muscle, monk players. Terranzu, the Monkey King, and the Grandmaster, player character, defeat Skola and make their way to the rest of the survivors. Terranzu then points out that the Order of the Broken Temple will not be safe while Lady Kellatris remains alive, so they retreat to the Wandering Isle to devise a plan. And this is where Terranzu and the Monkey King join the cause as champions of the Order of the Broken Temple so that they can help track the enemy Tidescorn's movements in hopes of locating the missing monks. And I hope they also like going on errand after errand that I send them on.
Oh, I'm sure they love it. It's all for a bigger, greater cause. And speaking of those scouts, after facing many trials in Stormheim, including hostile tribes, wolves, ghosts, and dragons, the champions catch up with the Tidescorn and discover where the monks are being held, which is at the Gates of Valor. The Legion plans to sacrifice the prisoners for their souls, and waiting for reinforcements would take too long, so the Grandmaster takes matters into their own hands. Freeing a night elf monk prisoner, Solera Steelsong, and meeting up with Argus Iron Fist. Or Angus.
Angus, man. Angus
Yeah,
Iron Fist.
Angus Iron Fist. I'm so used to Argus. I probably even typed Argus later on in the notes. Angus Iron Fist. The trio heads to the Gates of Valor to deal with the Legion and their pawn, God King Scovald, and his minions. Angus points out a brew that the Vicrul are drinking called Storm Brew, which makes a fighter much stronger and would be of use to the monks in the future. Freeing the prisoners as they go and eventually coming across a troll monk named Hero, Angus' friend. When Hero's released, the Soul Gazer, who is the keeper of the prisoners, shows up, very angry that the prisoners are escaping. It's literally one of those giant eyeballs that does like the gazy eye beam thing.
Yeah.
So the Soul Gazer. After defeating the Soul Gazer, Solera, Angus, and Hero all join the Order as champions. Now that Keltra's plan has been stalled, the Grandmaster decides to seek out the Vicrul Brewmaster who created Storm Brew, hoping to learn her secrets.
But sadly, the Brewmaster has died. But thankfully, had an apprentice. Agira? I
can't remember.
I'm not good with Viking names. But the apprentice Agira does turn out to be alive and tells the monk of the Storm Brew recipe, insisting it was so desired that Odin himself serves it in the halls of valor. So why don't you just like call up your best warrior friend? You know, tell him to go back to the order hall and get it.
Maybe monks don't talk to warriors? I don't know.
Who knows? Weapons, we fight with our hands.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, a neighboring clan's brewmaster, Morjern, was jealous of Melba and so sent a raiding party to kill her and claim the recipe. Though he has the recipe, he lacks the skill to brew the ale.
I bet you can see where this is going.
Yeah. So Agira and the Grandmaster sneak into the Vrykul camp. They sample the brews within. I love the idea of going on like a beer tasting flight while you also adventure and fight people.
That's basically what you do. You're going around tasting all the different barrels of brew, and it gets better and better the closer you get to the brewmaster. So that's literally how you track him down.
That's so cool. What were they using to cleanse their palate, though? At a certain point, never mind. All right.
The blood of their enemies? I don't know.
They're just running around with pieces of ginger.
Pretty hardcore.
Just popping them in. Anyway, while in the camp, Agira reveals that there used to be brewmaster kings and queens who fought in a style similar to Pandaren monks, which is interesting because until now, the love of brews and the hand-to-hand combat style were thought to originate only on Pandaria. But
as far as we know, like as players and as characters, it was very much a Pandaren thing.
Yeah, as far as the history of Warcraft has been shown to us thus far. But apparently getting drunk and fighting with your hands leads to similar fighting styles. Who'd have thunk it?
Next expansion, there's like an Irish island.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So anyway, they follow the stronger and stronger brews until they finally come to Morjern, who is unwilling to share the recipe, to no one's surprise. And the Grandmaster then helps Agira avenge her fallen master and retrieve the Storm Brew recipe. After this, the Grandmaster gets to send out the Order's champions to gather one of the ingredients for the brew, water from Freya's spring in High Mountain, while they head to trade with the Druids of Al-Sharaff for some hops, as well as enter the Halls of Valor themselves to find the tools to create the brew, Odin's Cauldron, which is awesome, by the way. Does it also have an eye patch? I don't think it does.
Wait, what?
Because Odin's missing an eye.
Oh, I was like, why would a cauldron have an eye patch? Do you know what a cauldron is, Garrett? I'm very confused.
Do you know what an Odin is, Jocelyn? I'm very confused. Anyways, upon returning once more to the Wandering Isle, the Grandmaster finds that the isle is under attack, with the only hope being to finish the brew to empower the monk troops with alcohol. The Grandmaster heads to the temple to meet with Chen and Agira. Chen and the Grandmaster defend Agira as she brews at all costs, holding the door against the Legion's waves of demons. Agira is able to finish the brew, which the Grandmaster drinks before facing off against Lady Calatress herself. Finally, the Order of the Broken Temple gathers after the lady is defeated, taking a moment to mourn the loss of their temple at the Peak of Serenity and also their fallen, friends. They then celebrate the victory and the founding of their new order, toasting the fellowship and friendship, led, of course, by Chen Stormstout.
It's actually a surprisingly moving speech, given the fact that, like, monks are and pandas are so jovial and very much like their whole campaign is about beer. So
yeah,
I was actually pleasantly surprised by how seriously they seem to take it.
That was kind of my experience with the Pandaria expansion overall. I mean, this was so, like, you go in and, like, face value, you're like, oh, Kung Fu Panda, pandas are dumb, this is silly. And even, like, all of the humor around brewmasters and drinking alcoholic beverages and fighting, like, that's funny and lighthearted. But then at its core, this is surprisingly deep and rich lore that they have written, and this culture that they have made up, granted pulled very heavily from Chinese culture and folklore, but I don't know, the further we get away from Pandaria, the more and more I look back on it with extreme nostalgia. I really think it's one. Lich King's my favorite, but if it wasn't for my Arthas fanboyism, I think Pandaria might be my favorite expansion.
Ooh, interesting. I really, really enjoyed Pandaria. I thought they did a great job. I really liked the way that the quest progression went, and how, like, the zones would change little by little as you move through them. So, like, Jade Forest is the one, obviously, that comes to mind super quickly, because everyone did that, and it was very much like you landed and then you made a camp and then you kind of moved in and you just, like, you progressed further, as opposed to, like, go out, come back, go out, come back. It was, like, always this forward progression feeling, and that was the first time that I felt that they did that in Warcraft.
Yeah.
I think they did, like you said, they did make it deep, and they made it kind of dark, and I think that it worked because of that. I think they could have gone way too fluffy, and they didn't. They brought it back down to earth.
Well, and also for me, it was beautiful. I don't have a better word to describe it. It was an absolutely beautiful expansion. The art direction, the music, the voiceover, everything just came together to give me something I never thought was possible in World of Warcraft. They really swung for the fences, and I think they nailed it. I think Pandaria was their biggest risk.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, I think they did a great job, and I'm glad that they did such a great job on the Monk Order Hall. I think it was a really good one to kind of end with. We definitely ended on a high note. There were a couple of others that kind of didn't hit home quite as well, so I'm glad that we ended up ending on Monks, because it was really good, and I'm glad that we covered a lot of them, although I will say there's some that impacted the kind of greater World of Warcraft a little bit more than others did. So I think maybe we should have looked into it a little bit more before covering each and every one. But then I know, if we had skipped an Order Hall or two, there would have been some players who were upset. So I hope you guys liked our Order Hall campaign series. It was, 10 weeks or whatever, 10 shows.
Yeah,
we've been doing it for a while.
No, and you really, I'm just going to compliment you real quick. So everyone, if you enjoyed these, Jocelyn really deserves a round of applause, because I may have helped on, like, the first two, and then just week after week we kept coming back to it. I kept finding myself with less and less time to go and dig up lore on campaigns I did not play through. And this wouldn't have happened without Joss, and you did a kick-ass job on it.
Thanks, Garrett.
Well, shall we wrap things up by cracking open our inbox for the last time until BlizzCon?
Sure.
All right, cool.
Sounds good.
Folks, you can send your emails to fazpodcast@gmail.com. That is fazpodcast@gmail.com. And keep them coming. Maybe send stuff after BlizzCon. Actually, yeah, that's a good idea. Send us your reactions to World of Warcraft news at BlizzCon to fazpodcast@gmail.com. Lascan writes in this week and says, "Hi guys, Lascan here from AIE. In my mind, the recent actions of the pretentious chandelier, aka Zera." Oh my God, I had to think about that for a minute.
This is so, like, I was like, I don't even need to read the rest of this email. This is just awesome.
Yep, I love it. Someone else in the chat room earlier, and I apologize because I don't remember, and it's chat has happened, so it's not here anymore, referred to them as crystal chandelier people. Which also, or not chandelier, crystal wind chime people. That's what it was.
Oh.
Which made me laugh.
So good.
Yeah. Anyway.
This email, I should just mention before we get too much further into it, did come in a couple weeks ago. So it was before the audio drama, before the 7.3 had resolved. So keep that in mind when you're listening to this email.
Okay. So anyway, the pretentious chandelier Zera, Laskin says, have confirmed for me that the light and the void are just two extremes. And we've just been blindly assuming that the path of the light is good and that the alternative is evil. I first started getting suspicious when I saw Lothraxian. Do you think he has friends and family at home who tell stories about the day the light corrupted Lothraxian and stole him away? Is he really acting out of free will? I bet there are. Even though it's not that clean of a narrative, the Dreadlords were also corrupted and enslaved by the Legion.
Mm-hmm. Which is where I find this kind of really interesting. There were a couple of points, again, I'm going to go back to the audio drama because it clarified a lot of stuff, and it was really good. So you probably shouldn't listen to me. You should go and listen to that. But they actually delved a little bit into Lothraxian as a character, and he talked about, his time with the Legion and how he died innumerable deaths and how he spent his life there fighting actually against the Void. So it was really kind of interesting to see a little bit of his backstory. And I also like the point that they made, and I think, again, this was from how the Void views the light. But there was one specific phrase that really kind of hit home for me that I thought was really interesting when they were talking about how the light essentially corrupts everything, with these like moments of hope and these fleeting moments of like hope and happiness for like essentially a lifetime of servitude. I just thought, like, I was like, holy hell, that is totally how the light works. When you look at like priests and paladins, like and I mean, obviously we do it more often because we're player characters and so we're constantly casting our light spells and things like that. But whenever you hear about them mentioned in the lore, it's very much like they are praying and pleading for the light to answer their prayers, and then every once in a while it does, and then they're able to defeat their enemies or heal their friends or however it works out in these lore stories. And then the light is basically gone. Like, you can kind of feel the tingle, but it doesn't actually, give you anything. But because you had that fleeting moment of power, you're like, oh my God, I am devoted to the light. I am a priest or I am a paladin. And, I thought that view of the light was very, very interesting.
Can you blame them, though? I feel like, modern day religions, if I prayed and I got superpowers, all of a sudden, I probably wouldn't have as many questions about religion as I actually do. So that also makes sense to me. But you're right. It's within the confines of game mechanics, it takes a little bit away from, I think, the story that they're trying to tell, which again just boils down to Jedi and Sith.
I guess I don't know Star Wars quite as well as you do, so I'm just going to take your word on that.
Totally fine. But yeah, Laskin, totally in. We're in your boat.
Mm-hmm.
We'll help you
and
out.
I love that this email came in. Like, our fans are super smart. I love that this email came in before we had any kind of confirmations out of Blizzard. So, GG to you, Laskin. Thanks for sending in your email.
Yeah. And who is our final email from today?
This one comes to us from Ryan. It's a little bit longer, so bear with me. He says, "Hey guys, as far as the discussion near the end of the latest podcast, I have to agree wholeheartedly with the idea that we become too much of the paragons of the game where the story revolves around us. The appeal of the game has always been the massive story where these ultra-powerful NPCs we get to interact with. On special occasions, we even get to control them. Nothing will ever top Warcraft 3 in the scope of what happened in the overarching story to me. These are the moments that solidified Warcraft for many people. And getting into WoW early felt like the obvious continuation. We were the grunts, but we were able to accept quests and fighting for control of areas to utilize resources in the war against other people. The same strife that made the URL battle.net the place to challenge your friends to see who was better. I love the IP that Blizzard has created, the lore, and most of the novels. We have reached what it is, for all intents and purposes. The end of the story started in Warcraft when Gul'dan opened the portal because of the whisperings in his mind from Sargeras and set forth to invade another world. Closing that circle seems to be the only way to restore the focus back to player versus player. We are too powerful for our own good, and Blizzard realizes this. They need an out to get back to where they need to be. I truly hope we get a Warcraft 4 or a World of Warcraft 2 following the end of whatever we do to Sargeras. Give us a reason that we have to go to Theramore, fight with Jaina, and an ending that unleashes the Void Lords. And then call it a day and let us know that whatever is next will be different. Start anew, give people the option to play as Void-powered or Light-powered characters instead of Alliance versus Horde. We've just reached the Army of the Light. We're now coming into something larger than ourselves again, where we are rank and file members. Good! Let's get back to that. It worked for more than a decade. The balance was right, the progression was tangible, and the little victories seem so epic that we remember them fondly. Who among your listeners remembers 40-man raids into the enemy capital just because it's Friday night? Or luring a world boss into a starter zone to wreak havoc? Stealth or brute force one-man forays into the enemy territory to see what it was all about? Or mess with the locals and generally have fun being a pain? We need more of that and less of "you're the chosen one," along with these 25 or 30 other high lords, high priest, archdruid, whatevers that are running around here.
Oh, man. Man, I love this. But we're never going to get a World of Warcraft 2.
No, I think it would be way too hard for them to like transfer their fan base and everything else. Like, it's so much easier for them to just give us another expansion and another expansion and another expansion. But I mean, I love the idea though. I absolutely do. It would be so cool to like just abandon our whole idea of the Alliance and the Horde and be part of a greater universe where we have these conflicting forces. Hell, why does it even have to be 2? Why can't it be 4? Why don't we have Fel, Arcane, Light, and Void, and you have to pick a side and go? Like, how cool would that be if it was all just these like warring forces and factions, and maybe they all have their own planets? Like, it could be huge and it could be great, but I don't think it'll be ever, a World of Warcraft 2 or outside the World of Warcraft universe. I think the best we can hope for is some sort of expansion. But even then, like, it's going to be really hard for some people who've been playing since vanilla to go, okay, now I have to give up my Alliance or my Horde affiliation. Like, I think that would be very difficult for them to wrap their heads around, and they would probably quit playing because they've quit playing over less. I've seen, especially even, like, if you remember the upheaval when they gave like new models to the characters and people's faces changed and they were like, this is the character I've been looking at for 10 years, and Blizzard's like, but there's more polygons now, it looks better, and they're like, no. If people get upset about that, can you imagine if you told them your faction no longer exists?
Yeah, I want to just be able to party up with a cross faction. It's silly at this point. Every major story in Warcraft worth a damn has Horde and Alliance partying up across faction lines. It's over. For love of God. Honestly, I think this should have happened when Metzen left. Like, as like, Metzen is leaving, we're finally going to have unity as a final goodbye to the man that made so much of this possible.
Yeah, it just seems like that's almost the thing that Ryan, our listener, is saying is bad. Like, he wants, more of the like powerful players versus powerful players because, one way or another, even if we keep our characters, we're now basically all on the same level with each other, right? So he wants to double down on the, great champions fighting great champions for whatever the reason happens to be, because that's where he finds the fun in the game. And I mean, as someone who loves PvP and, you know, really gets behind the Horde versus Alliance to the point that I only just started an Alliance character literally for this show to see the other side of the lore. I'm very invested in the Alliance versus Horde, and, you know, how it's the same argument that you have with the Light and the Void. It's like some people for the longest time thought like Alliance was good and Horde was bad, and it's just not that black and white. So I'm very invested in that kind of story and those faction lines. So I would love to see a focus go back to some sort of PvP, however they decide to put that in the story. But pitting, I think, the powerful characters that we now control against each other is probably the best step that Warcraft is going to be able to take, however they do that.
Yeah. And in Devil's Advocate, in their defense, the main story in Legion, it's not about us. There's all these side stories because of the mechanics of class order halls and the mechanics of the artifact weapons. But it's about Velen. It's about Illidan at the end of the day. Those are like our two major players. Now we're getting into Turalyon. We're getting into Alleria. We're getting into, Kill Jaden, who's dead. Spoiler alert, Gil'dan, who's dead. But like the main arc of Legion, we are still pawns. We're just pawns with extremely powerful weapons and are, of course, the leaders of that. It's really, for me, it's just semantics. I don't want to be called the main leader of everything. I want to feel like I am a soldier, not the only soldier, not the ultimate soldier.
Yeah, and I feel like they kind of started down that path, or at least doubling down on that path in Draenor when they made you the general. Like when they made you essentially above your faction leader. Because I know, like, Vol'jin was around, but you didn't really see him too much. Like, you were in charge of the day-to-day operations of things. Like, you were called the general of the Horde or the Alliance. And, you know, once they did that, then you're kind of like, there's nowhere else to go. There's no more progression, which is why I think they said, okay, well, if we can't progress them in terms of Alliance and Horde anymore, we'll progress them in terms of their order. And they will go from a grunt in their order to the head of it. Which is fine, except that, you know, now what do you do? Because he is totally right, and I can't remember who wrote in to bring this topic up, the power level topic up originally, but being like one of a bazillion High Lords in my order hall, and of course, like, there's a lot of people running around even using the title. So it's like, if we're all High Lords, none of us is High Lords, and this sucks.
Right, it just kind of renders it irrelevant. And and it's not to say I didn't enjoy the Quest Order Hall campaign. It's the thing I enjoyed the most on my Death Knight. Granted, that's because I think
totally.
I don't like the way they built Death Knights. This expansion is really what it boils down to. But I'm glad they had that. But I could have had the same experience and they just changed a few of the words that they used. I just didn't need to feel like I was the most important character.
Yeah. I think you're right. I would have enjoyed the same sort of campaign if I was like the right-hand person or something like that. Like if I was important enough and had proven myself enough to be included at the table of a lot of these big discussions without actually being like the next Tyrion, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let Mograine call the shots. I'll do what he tells me to.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I'm on board with that.
Yeah. So, but again, it's nitpicky for me because I do really think Legion has been a out of the park expansion. They've really done a good job with it. So,
oh, definitely. And I mean, there's still so much more to come. We were expecting an expansion to be announced at BlizzCon and then possibly released next year. If that's the case, they've also mentioned that they're going to do more content in between, some sort of a like small patch in between 7.3 and whatever comes after. So no more raid content, no more dungeon content, but at least they're going to kind of tie up the story and they're going to give us something to do between now and the release of the next expansion. So even if we're looking at 12 months, we're not looking at 12 months with absolutely no content. So it's going to be interesting. There's going to be, it sounds like, some sort of potential patch and then also some sort of pre-expansion event like we had with the invasions or with the portal stuff going into Draenor. So still more content to come, lots of stuff. So expect periodic episodes of For Azeroth coming your way over the next 12 months or so.
Yes, absolutely. So that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. And again, after BlizzCon comes and goes and we know what direction World of Warcraft is heading, send your emails into fazpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about what's happening to Azeroth next, if we're even still fighting on Azeroth. Who knows? Argus could blow up, we'll be scattered to the stars, we'll show up in the Caprulu sector, and the universe of StarCraft will finally be a thing.
Well, have you seen, just before we do go, have you seen the leaked map? Or not really leaked, I guess data mined, I think it was, with the
map on the armor set?
No, not the armor set. There was I think it's Sisyphus, whatever.
Sisyphus?
Yeah, that one, that place. Again,
just don't say syphilis.
By myself and I never hear the names of things. Like, I make them up in my head and just like kind of scan over them and go like, yeah, I know that place. But then I have to say them out loud and I get really embarrassed because I don't know how to pronounce things. Anyways, there was like it was like a blood of the broken world or something fell to Azeroth and like blew open a hole.
Okay.
Yeah, so that looks like the next thing. So it looks like we're going to explode the world soul that is inside Argus, and that's going to rock Azeroth because they're now so closely connected and stuff, right? So parts of the world are going to fall, and Azeroth will be forever changed.
Steel Dawn in the chat room says, just call it the bug zone.
Fair enough. Okay, the bug zone.
But there's a bug zone in Pandaria that I also can never remember the name of. Actually, remember Sisyphus more than I remember the Dreadwaste, but whatever.
Civ is correcting me and saying it's from the raid, so.
Spoiler from the Antorus raid. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right,
so
folks.
Sorry, anyone who hadn't seen that. Didn't mean to spoiler you.
Oh God, we had to go, Jocelyn.
I'm sorry.
All right. Well, before we go, where can folks find you, Joss? You're doing plenty of other things.
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at Joss Plays. You can also find me right here on twitch.tv/AMoveTV every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for The Gamers Inn, which is my general gaming podcast. Not to mention all the stuff I do with Garrett.
Like Embrace the Spoilers, which is
well done.
A good show you should go and subscribe to. We this upcoming Monday, we will be recording our episode for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. If you backed our Kickstarter, the commentary track just went up today. So go to our Kickstarter page. You should hopefully have an email if you are a backer and download that and listen to an hour of us both groaning and then an hour of us having a really good time. Because that's Temple of Doom. Half of a terrible movie, half of a great movie.
Yep.
And other than that, I'm on Twitter at GarrettArt, and every podcast I do, including this one, Embrace the Spoilers, and every other podcast, including like things like The Angry Chicken that I also do with you, Jocelyn, can be found over there. So go and check it out. That will do it until BlizzCon. But until then, good luck, have fun, and for Azeroth.